Hi everybody, and welcome back to Sew Along with Jan and the April Mini Quilt by Kimberbell. This is the little Eastery one, and even though Easter this year in the year of 2024 is in March, this is the April design, and this one was a little different than the other ones that we've done so far. I talked about this just a little bit in the first video. These smaller blocks, so these are like 4.5-inch blocks that'll finish 4 inch. These are reverse applique. So there's two different kinds. There's a reverse applique block and a reverse applique block with a window. So we're going to do the reverse applique blocks first in this video. This is the second video of this series. We'll do the the reverse applique blocks first. So what that means is there's a little applique, reverse applique. So there's a piece of fabric that's added to the back here. And then there's a little window on the top that's in the shape of an egg. And then there's an applique on top of it. Okay. So I've done one of the blocks already, and it was this first one here, but they're all done the same way, with a small alteration that this one was done with embroidery leather, the little bunny rabbit. And then the other two, I believe, have some of the foam, the flexi foam in them, so that they're going to make them a little dimensional. So this one did not have foam in it. It was just the embroidery leather. So, okay, but what we have to do with this, and this is what I remember reading about this design on Facebook, and people were having trouble figuring out what to do. Well, the thing is, since we're doing this with the quilting, because you can see I've added the quilting to mine, okay? People were having a little trouble following the instructions, and the instructions are separated, and I found it a little confusing myself. But after I looked at the pictures, I understand what they're doing. I just needed to figure out how the instructions said this. So there is not only the instructions for the mini quilt, the April mini quilt, but there's also a little addendum that's called Reverse Applique with Block by Block Quilting. So you need to print out, there's just 3 pages here, and it goes through the basic beginnings of each one of the designs, and then you finish it using the instructions and the actual instructions. So I think that will make it a little bit more clear. It's not hard. It's just that they kind of separated things and it made it a little harder to find. So we're going to just worry about the reverse applique blocks in this video. So I did bunny 2 already. We're going to do the chick 3 and the bunny 3 in this video. Bunny 2 is done the same way as we're going to do the next 2 blocks, with the exception of it's just embroidery leather without the little piece of flexi foam underneath of it. Otherwise, it's done the same way. Okay, so I have we're going to do the chick 3. So give me a second here. I'm going to turn my page to chick 3. And this is the one that is going to be done in the purple, the lavender. So we've got my lavender fabric here. So let's get these out of the way. And so we need to have the background fabric, which is the biggest piece here. And we need to get these unpinned. And we're going to have the fabric that's going to be over the little chick, and that's going to be this little piece of white. And then this is the little window that's going to be behind. And then this is going to be part of the egg that we're going to actually cut out of the center here. So it's not as complicated as it looks. It looks a little more complicated than it needs to. So here it says block by block quilting. If using block by block quilting, refer to the reverse applique with block by block quilting PDF file. Instructions below are for use with the traditional quilting method. So we are using that method, and here are the instructions. So there are even special designs for this, because they added some extra lines to take out like the inside portion of this little window part. Okay, so we're going to be working with the chick 3 and the bunny 3, and I already did bunny 2. So we're going to be doing this first, and then we'll talk, that's the bottom row, by the way. And then the top row is going to be done the opposite way with a little, we're going to do some sewing or embroidery first and then put the window on top. So we'll do those in the next video. Okay. So we're going to go get our quilting design first. So let's go over here and get our quilting design. And mini quilts. And this one, they're using Easter 4. So we're going to go get Easter 4, and it's a little 4x4. So there's the 4x4. So we're going to be doing this in a 5x7 frame. And all I have in my frame right now is my no-show mesh stabilizer. So I have a 5x7 frame with my no-show mesh. Then we're going to go get the design that we want. And I'm doing chick 3. So we need to have a special block by block chick. So it's going to be, we're going to hit add now, and it's going to be in a separate folder. So if you'll see the folders here, a second here. Here's the files. We'll go to April. And then when I'm going here, here's the block by block files. So I'm going to go into those, and I'm going to be doing my little chick. So here's the little chick right here. Okay, so this is the 5x7 BBB. So like block by block chick. So we're going to choose that one. And that has an extra line in it so that it will allow us to cut out the little window in here. So Kimberbell actually does this quite a lot. They like to cut through the stabilizer and work on the front and the back of the hoop at the same time. So I think maybe if I say that, then people will understand how to do this. So we're going to start out by following these instructions here. On the other side of this paper are the basic instructions for the first part of the little window. So we're going to use the little window and make it first. So down here, what makes it a little bit confusing is that they give you all these different step numbers. And what they're doing, our machines, the Brother Baby Lock machines, show you, since we put in the quilting first, those are going to be first and not step 1. Okay, so mine, remember there's 5 steps to each one of these quilting designs. And so our machine, where we need to start this particular design, is on step number 6, which would be the first step of the actual little chick to get started. And then we're going to back up and do the quilting. And all we're going to use out of the quilting design this time is just the quilting part. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get down here so I can get started. I'm going to hit my negative positive needle, and I'm going to drive down here to my step number 6. And this is the first step of the actual chick part. Okay, so we're going to do that first. So I'm going to get my instructions. So you're going to need both sets of your instructions, because we're going to go back in a few minutes to page 11. And right now I'm on this reverse applique with block by block quilting instruction sheet. Okay, so let's get this going here. And I think I'm going to put in my lavender thread, my lilac thread, 810, that matches my purple here. So I'm going to click OK here, and then I'm going to just go back over here, and we'll get ready to start our design. So by following that addendum applique part, it tells us to, and I've just got bobbin thread in the bobbin. It tells us to stitch the batting placement line. So we're just going to start with the batting placement line. Get these out of the way. I got my chunk of batting behind me here. I do have shape flex on the back of this little kind of peachy colored piece that's going to be the background, like behind, and you'll see that in a minute. And I also have some shape flex on the actual background fabric that we're going to be using first. Okay. So now we're going to lay our, whoops, looks like I need to rethread my bobbin here. I've been having bobbin issues. I don't know what's going on here. I think I'm going to get a new bobbin. For some reason, my machine's wanting to kick up a little pokey on the top every now and then, and I don't know why. I have a new bobbin case. So let's see if it was just the bobbin. Sometimes it's just like there might be a burr on the bobbin or it's catching on something. So sometimes just change your bobbin. So I'm going to put a new pre-wound bobbin in. Make sure I have the right bobbin case in. I have my tight bobbin case in. I do. All right. So then we're going to lay up here. We're going to put our batting in here. It says place a piece of batting completely covering the placement line. So I've got my little chunk of batting behind me here. And we're going to do that next. So I wanted to stitch out a couple of these before I did the video, just so that I was sure that I understood the instructions after reading the comments on Facebook. And I knew where I was going. I just didn't know how they were writing it down. So I thought it was a little hard with the extra instructions. I wish they would have put like a whole set of instructions that were together that were just for the batting parts. You know, if you were using the batting, and then one that for when you weren't, because it would have been a little easier, because then they would have been on the same pieces of paper. But that they did it separate, and it makes sense now after I've done it a couple times. Okay. Now, what's different about this over the normal like quilting batting lines? See how it's going to drive around and make the little egg shape in here? So that's going to allow us to trim out that center section for our little applique or reverse applique egg. So this is step number 7 in the machine, since I have got, you know, the quilting in there. Okay, and then it says to trim the batting close to the stitch lines, and we're going to trim out the inside of the egg and the outside of the square. So this would have been just as if we were doing it the way, you know, we normally do, by trimming around the outside edge. But then we're going to take out that egg, because we're actually going to cut through the stabilizer in a little bit here and push like a lining down through there, so that we're working on both sides of the hoop. So that's, I think, where people were getting confused, is that they kind of combined the regular quilting with this new applique quilting. So I'm take my batting out of here. And like I said, the little bunny, that I'll show you the bunny at the end again, but it's done the same way. The only thing that's different about that one is that there is no, there's going to be foam, like that little flexi foam, in the 2 that we're doing now, and there was none in that because it was done with embroidery leather. So that's the only difference. There'd be a couple less steps in it. All right, whoops, got to get around here. So get as close to the stitching as you can, because we're going to be pushing some fabric through here in a little bit. Okay, so there's our basic shape. And then the next step says, except that I just threw all the papers on the floor. Second, all of them fell off on the floor. I don't have a lot of room when I work in here, so I have stuff all over the place, it seems like. Okay. Let me get back to the page here. Then it says to stitch the background placement line. So number 8 on the machine right now is going to be the background placement line, like we always sew out, you know, to show us where our background's going to go. We're going to stitch around there, and I'm just using my lavender for this whole thing, because I'm going to quilt this with the lavender for this first part. And then I think I made a mistake when I did my first blocks, and I did the little outline at the end with the same color, so I'm going to do all of mine that way. I think they're supposed to be white, and I'll show you that. So then we're going to lay this in here and try to get it as centered as possible. And then we're going to do the tack down line, which is going to tack down around the outside edge of our fabric. And this is step number 9. We're just going to tack this down. And then the next step is actually we're going to back up, because at this point we need to quilt this. Okay, so now we're going to quilt this. So I'm going to go ahead and go back over here, and I'm going to back up to step, we know step number 5 in the quilting is always the quilting part. Okay, so we're going to back up to step number 5, and I'm just going to do the quilting on here. And I may go ahead and get it started and stop the video for a moment while it's working here. And then we're going to go back to the actual reverse applique chick instructions to do the rest of it. So this is how we're going to start these. So you can see it's not hard. It's just that things are kind of separated from one another. All right, so we're just going to do the quilting, and then I'll be back in a moment, and we're going to start the actual reverse applique chick. Okay, so there's the quilting of the design. So now it tells me to go to follow the embroidery instructions to complete the block. So what that means, this next page, this is the 3rd page of that addendum. So here's the chick right here. So I got that design, and then it tells me to move to, after quilting, go to direction step 1 on page 11. So now we're going to go back to our regular instructions. Let me get these out of the way. And let's go back to our regular instructions on page 11, and it tells me to go to step number 1. So step number 1 is the lining placement line. So we have to go back to our design here to make sure that we're on the correct design for, so that's the part that we did for the actual quilting. So now we're going to move on, and I think it might say here, give me just a second to go back to page 2 of that addendum, and the reverse applique blocks start on step number 10. It's right here at the bottom. Okay, and by going into the page 3, it tells us each one to go to step number 1 on page 11, and this one will say 13. So we need to be on step number 10. We did 5 because that was the quilting, and then we jumped forward to step number 10 so that we can start with the first step on page 11. Okay, so now we're going to do, it says starch the lining fabric and press well. Load the embroidery file into the machine, which you've already done, of course, and then stitch the lining placement line. So that's what this is here. It's just a little shape of an egg. I'm going to leave my purple thread in, and we're going to be starching. I'll get up and do that real quick here. I'll turn the video off for a second, but they just tell you to put a little starch on your, this is the lining fabric. It's the one that's 5 by 5, and the actual background fabric was 6.5 by 6.5. So I'm just going to go put a little starch on this just to give it a little bit more body, and then I'll come back and we'll do our placement line. Okay, so we're ready for the placement line. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is step number 10 in the instructions, and that's including, you know, our quilting design that's already in there. And it's just going to do the shape of our egg, and then we're going to place the lining fabric, that piece that I just starched. Camera back over here, sorry. And I'm going to lay this piece, that 5 by 5 piece, here's my egg right here, okay? I'm going to lay that down kind of centered over the egg, face down. So we want the right sides together, okay? Face down. And then I'm going to stitch out step number 11, which is going to stitch these together. And as soon as you see this done one time, it'll make total sense. When I looked at them, I'm like, I understand where they're going, but I'm not sure how they got there. And it is not as hard as it looks. And this is where everybody always gets kind of scared, because we're going to actually trim through. So after that step, carefully trim inside of the seam stitch about 1/4 of an inch leaving a seam allowance, cutting through all layers of the fabric and the stabilizer. So yes, we are going to cut through our stabilizer. So what I found worked best for me is just to use my Ginger scissors here. And I'm going to go through this top part first. I'm going to leave about 1/4 of an inch, or maybe just a little less, like a seam allowance on the inside. So I'm trimming on the inside. And I'm going to trim this piece off first. It was easier for me just to do one layer at a time. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It'll be all inside. You won't see any of it. Okay, so I'm going to trim that off like that. And then I'm going to go down through my stabilizer and this other piece of fabric. Might take a little doing to get started, because we're going to go through stabilizer and one layer of fabric here. And it did help. I did notice that it helped a little bit to starch that fabric, because it just gives it a little more body. There's no other stabilizer on it. So okay, so we're going to trim around here. I've never done reverse applique like this before. I've done reverse applique several times, but this is a little different. All right. So then we're going to, it says clip the curve inside up to the stitch line. So what we're going to do is we're going to clip little clips, just like we would on curved items that we sew. And then we're going to turn this inside. So I'm just going to go around and I'm going to clip pretty close together, maybe 1/8 of an inch or so together. Up, and don't clip through your sewing line, just clip up to it. It works better with a pair of straight scissors here. So I'm just going to trim up to that line about 1/8 of an inch apart all the way around. That takes a minute to do that, but this will lay pretty nice and flat then. Get it turned here. See where I stopped. I think I got a little piece. Oh, got a little piece there. There you go. So I'm just going to go around. These actually started after I did one. I'm like, oh, well, this goes along pretty quick once you get the hang of it. It's just that I thought the instructions were a little hard to follow. Once I figured out where I had to go, I was okay. And I understood what they were trying to do. All right, so there is our clips. Then it says, carefully pull the lining fabric through the hole. To iron the back of the hoop, we're going to turn the hoop over here and we're going to iron. And what I learned by doing this, so we're going to take this and it's going to go through the hole. Okay, so this is all going to be pulled to the back like this. And I'm just going to kind of finger press it a little bit. Try not to pull your design out of your hoop or anything. Just going to pull this to the back. And if you've clipped close enough, it should lay quite flat. And we will press it. So I'm just going to bring this around. Oops, got all kinds of strings here. There we go. I'm going to bring this around and pull this back just a little. Kind of give it a little finger press before we press it. Okay. So then we're going to turn this over, and I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do because I can't iron on my machine. But I took my little ironing pad that I had made in another class, and I know a lot of you have probably seen this video, and I'm going to fold this in half like this, and I'm going to lay this on my ironing mat. I'm going to put this underneath the hoop, and then I'm going to press down on this and press that nice little seam in there, and then I'll tape it in the corners to tape this back. Okay, so I can't really iron here on my machine, but I wanted to show you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to pull it back like this, get it nice and flat, and then press it nice with this little mat in there. If you have one of those wool mats that fits in your hoop, that would work too. I just don't happen to have one. So I'm just going to press that nicely, and then I'm going to put tape on these corners. So give me a moment and I'll be right back and I'll show you the tape. Okay, so I've got that pressed. You can see it looks pretty nice and flat. It may be just slightly wrinkled, but if you put some tape out here on the corners, it kind of tells you to do the tape on the corners. I think that's on page 12. Yes, the tape on the corners is what they do. So just kind of pull it back so that it stays nicely. I'm just going to put some Kimberbell paper tape out here on the corners, like that. Okay, and then when I turn this over, look how nice that looks. Looks very nice. And then there's the little seam all the way around and our little egg in the middle. Okay, so let me turn my page here. It says place the hoop right side down with the embroidery over the prepared surface, and we pressed it. And be careful not to loosen your stabilizer. It does say to starch this piece again. I did not starch it again. I just starched it the one time. I didn't know that it was necessary. I am going to put a little piece of tape right here because it's just a little bit wrinkly there, and maybe one down here because the rest of it looks pretty good. Okay. Then I tape the corners, and that's the next step. And now we're going to put the egg fabric. So the other piece that had the shape flex on it, mine's kind of a peachy color with some little polka dots on it. This is the egg fabric. So in other words, this is going to be like the background of the fabric of the egg here. So we're just going to lay this over that hole, and then we're going to tape it down to the back. So you might have quite a little bit of tape there, but that's okay. It won't hurt anything. We'll take it off here in a little bit. We're going to tape that down. Okay. And then we're going to I'm reading a little. Oh yeah, we have to turn this over. And we're going to put some wash away, some of the water soluble topping, the clear stuff. We're going to put this over the top here because we're going to kind of be sewing over that edge, and it recommends putting the wash away on. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a piece of wash away on here. I have two pieces because I think it's going to call for a second piece here in a minute. So I made mine longer so I could just flip it over. So we're going to tape this down, and we want to make sure that we're not going to catch the edge. So make sure you put it over far enough that you won't catch the edge of it. I'm always careful with water soluble because sometimes you can catch your foot in it. So bring it over, close to the edge of the little block there. And we're just going to tape this down. So we're on step number, let's see, step number 3. We're ready to stitch the egg tack down line. So in other words, it's going to tack down the egg to the background fabric. So it's going to do like a little decorative stitch. And in the instructions, and I missed it when I did my first ones, it showed doing this in white. And I'm going to do it in the matching to my background fabric because I've done the other ones that way so that they all match. All right, so we'll do that. So I'm going to put that in after I've got my water soluble on here. I'm going to put it back in the hoop here. Back in the machine. And then we're going to stitch out step number 12 on the machine, and that is going to be the tack down line that's going to hold the background to the little egg frame that we have here. So it's like a little triple stitch. So in the instructions it tells you to use white here, and I did not change my thread, so I'm going to do all of mine with matching so that they're all the same. There we go. So it should go right around the edge if you did well. Excuse me, still got a little bit of a cough, so. All right. So there's our tack down line. So now we're actually going to get into the applique part. So it says here, let's see, we're on step number 5, and this is on page 12. Let's see, we got the stitch the chick base placement line, and that's what we're going to put the little flexi foam on. So I need my here's my chick piece of fabric, which is the little white one with the swirls on it, and I need a piece of flexi foam. Let's see here. I can't remember what size it was. Let me go back a page and it'll tell me. The flexi foam was 3 by 3.5. Okay, let's see here. I've got that's a 3 by 3, 3 by 3. I think it's just a little bit bigger one. Here we go. It's this one. All right. So I've got my little pieces of fabric and my flexi foam, and I'm going to switch now to my white because my chick is white. And step number 13 on the machine then is going to be the placement line for the flexi foam, because we're going to be putting that flexi foam on. And the little bunny rabbit that I did not have this step because it was just the embroidery leather. So we still have our water soluble on top. We're going to leave that on there and do the placement line for the flexi foam. And it is going to kind of come up right onto the little frame there. Then we're going to place our flexi foam down, stitch the chick base tack down line. So then we're going to put this down over this line that we just made. And I'm just going to hold mine. You can tape it if you want to. I figure I got enough tape on here. And then we're going to trim our little piece of flexi foam. But it's going to give this a little bit of dimension. The embroidery leather, the reason they didn't put it under that is that already had some dimensions. So under the fabric, we need a little dimension here. Okay. So now we're going to trim our flexi foam. Just give me a second here. That's what it says. Yeah. So place the flexi foam and then remove the tape, trim the foam close to the stitch line. Okay. Make sure I'm not missing a step here. And the other reason I think they put the water soluble on here is that it keeps you from cutting into your fabric underneath. It just gives you a little something to trim against. It's a little easier because you got something to slide your scissors along, so helps a little bit. And you have to kind of pull up on this a little bit to get it close. Sometimes there's like 2 layers, and then the foam in between. It's kind of a tricot layer. So if you kind of pull up on it, it helps you get through all the layers. There we go. This is going to be cute. All right, so let's see. I think need to trim a little bit over here yet. All right, so there's our little chick with the flexi foam. So then we got that trimmed, and then the next stitch the chick placement line. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this back in. I'm going to leave the white in. And now we're going to do the placement line for the fabric, and the fabric's white. And you could have put a piece of flex foam on, or a piece of shape flex, I think, on the back of this. But with the flex foam underneath of it, it should be fine. I don't think you'll notice it. And you could have put, since it's so light colored. But it didn't tell you to, so. Place the chick fabric right side up. Okay, so we're going to put it right side up, right over our little flexi foam here. And then we're going to stitch the tack down line. I'm just going to hold mine. So this next step is the tack down line. Sometimes it helps me if I just look at the actual design of what I'm doing. Sometimes I just look at the actual design. Now see, I got a little pucker in there, so I'm going to stop this for a second. That happens sometimes when you're working with this flexi foam. I didn't pull to the left enough, so let me just pull this out. See, it's good that this happens, so you know what to do. I'm just going to grab my seam ripper, and we're just going to take a couple stitches out here and see if I can get this we'll back up and do this again, see if I can get this little wrinkle to come out. Might show a little, I think there's maybe a little comb on the top of the chick's head, so it may not have shown, but let's just see if we can get this pulled over a little bit more. I'll just take a few stitches out and we'll back up a little bit. And I'll just pull over to the side just a little bit while it's stitching. I think it'll be okay. All right, so let's back up a little bit. Maybe if I put it back in the machine. Helps if it's in the machine. Oh, I'm sorry. It's mad now. There we go. So let's back up so we can catch this. And I'm just going to grab this little section over here and kind of pull it down a little bit while it stitches that, just to kind of keep it from puckering again. Yeah, that looks much better. And then it's going to go around it a second time. Remove the tape, trim the fabric close to the stitch line. So now we're going to trim this fabric for our little chick. All right, so let me get this. Oh yeah, that looks way better. I'll get these little strings out of here and trim around here. So although these looked very daunting at first, after doing one, I'm like, oh, well, that makes total sense. I kind of knew where they were going. It was just hard to tell what instructions to use. And there's separate designs for some of these, so that's the difference. Okay, so we're going to go around here. Here we go. Looks pretty good. So there's our fabric, and then the next step is going to be the little legs. So I'm going to put my orange in to do his legs. And my orange is actually reddish brown. Is what it's called, 337. It's not a real orange because my fabric was a little bit more brown orange. So I chose this one to go with the other fabrics. All right. This back in there to do his little feet. Okay, so I will stitch the feet out and I'll be right back, and we'll go on. Oh, and then it's going to do the satin outline around the little chick. All right, so he's got little feet, and now we're going to go on to the satin stitch that's going to cover the raw edge of that white fabric. So I put my white back in, and we're just going to do the satin stitch around the little chick, and then we'll go back and do his wing and his beak. Okay, so now we're going to go and do the little wing and his beak, and they actually did both of those in the orange. So I've got my orange thread back in again, and we're going to do his wing and his beak, and then we'll come back and we'll do the tail and the comb, and those are going to be done in pink. Okay, so we got the little wing down here and the beak. And I think I told you before that I left this little piece in case I needed to flip it over again on the top. And these must not do that because this is fabric. And the first one I did, I had to flip my water soluble over the top, but it was because it was this embroidery leather, and they usually cover that up so that stuff doesn't sink down into it. So that's why we're only using one piece on this. And I imagine the next bunny will be the same, because actually, no, it might not be, because I think it's done in that little fuzzy, like it's all like almost like minky. So I think that is going to be done in that. So we may need two pieces for that. Okay, so now we're ready for the little comb on his head and his tail, and that's going to be done in the pink. So let me get my pink in here, and we'll do those, and then we'll be on to the last color is going to be his little eye. So we're almost done with this one. So it wasn't near as bad as I originally thought they'd be. They actually make total sense. It's just that the instructions are in two different places. So there goes his little comb, and then I'll come back when I've got the tail done as well. Okay, so we're ready for the final step, and I put my black thread in, and it's just going to be his little eye. And then we'll take this out of the hoop, and we'll do the trimming when we get the little bunny done, the next one, so we can do all of the trimming at the same time. And there's the little chick's eye. And we'll take all this extra stuff off. So it does tell you to, the final step, it tells you not to stitch out. It's just a placement line, so you don't want to stitch the last step. So this is where we needed to be. And then I'm going to trim this, and then I'm going to take all of this water soluble off. And you might need to do a little bit of trimming on it. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get it off. So, and then we'll take all this extra tape and stuff off the back. I'll keep that piece. I might need it again. So, all right. And then we'll take this out of the hoop. Take all the tape off the back. And you can see that it, it sewed the little background piece right in, and our little piece of lining fabric. Everything's all sewed down. And we're ready to go on to the next block. And we'll trim these all down to, I believe, 4.5 inches. So we'll do these all together. So there we go. So there is our little chick block. Isn't that cute? I got to finish a little bit more stabilizer here. It's a little hard to get it off, so I might have to pick at it a little bit. But there's our little chick. Look at there. So now we're going to go on to the next one, which is going to be Bunny 3. And it's going to be done in a similar manner, but this one's going to be done with some fuzzy, it's like almost like a minky. So we'll use that for our little bunny. So I'll be back in a moment after I kind of reset and get the next block ready. Okay, so now we're ready for Bunny 3, and this one's going to be done the same way. It's a little different in that I don't believe there's any, I thought there was going to be some of the flexi foam in there, but there isn't, because this is done with the plushy furry fabric. So they're just going to do that. So we won't have any flex foam in this one. So, okay, so let's see where we need to start with our directions. So we're going to start with the directions on the reverse applique with block by block quilting. So we're going to go get our quilting first, just like we did for the other two. I've already done one, but the one that we just did. So I'm going to go get the quilting first. And we're going to get the same one. It's the Easter 4. Let's get Easter 4. There it is. Okay. And set that one. And then we're going to go get the one that says Bunny 3. And again, this one's going to be in that special folder. So we're going to hit Add. And go into Mini Quilts, Embroidery Files. Have to go to April. And then we're going to go back into those block by block ones. So this is going to be the block by block, and this one's called Bunny 3. So let's see, we got to find Bunny 3. I think it's this one. Yeah, it's the one with the little standing bunny with the ears up. Yep, this one right here. So we're going to get that one. And this one, they're going to add some little flowers around the outside edge too. So there's our little bunny. Make sure I got the right one. Looks like it. Looking at the picture, I think that's the right one. Yep. Okay, so there's our little bunny. I'm going to set that one. Okay, so everything comes in centered, and that's what we want. Sorry, my phone is ringing. And then we're going to hit embroidery. All right, so now we're going to look again at our reverse applique instructions, the extra pieces, and we're going to go look here on page 2 of those, and we're going to start out the same way we did with the other one. So we need to start on step number 6, because remember we didn't quilt right away. We're going to start on step number 6, which is past the quilting. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go hit my negative positive needle and go down here to step number 6. I've got my 5x7 hoop in my machine again. So this is going to be our placement line for our batting. So we're going to start just like we did with the other one, and with our chick. And then the first one I did before I started the video was this one. It was done the exact same way. Okay. So here's the one we just did with the chick, And then I did this one earlier, and this is done exactly the same way. All right, so now we're doing bunny 3. So we're going to start out with these instructions. So I'll set these over on the side for a little bit. And it says to do the placement line, which is going to be step number 6 for the batting, just like we did before. So let me get my fabrics out of the way here. Got my no-show mesh in my hoop. I have my yellow thread in because that's the color I'm using for my background on this one. So we're going to do our, can't find my batting here. We're going to do our placement line for the batting. I've got my chunk of batting ready. And then we're going to lay our batting over it, and it's going to do the tack down line for the batting with the egg in the center cut out. Get this in here. There we go. I'm going to hold that down, and it's going to stitch the outline, the square outline, and then the little egg in the center so that we can trim through that. And these all turned out to be, they'll be 4.5 inches square when they're done, and they'll finish at 4 inches. Okay, and then it'll do the little egg in the center, and then we're going to trim that. So again, we're using those 3 extra pages of instructions on page 2. This is the instructions we have to start with. Gonna have to turn my fan on. It's getting warm. It's been an unusually warm winter, and it's like 75 degrees outside right now. I have sun outside, so that's part of it. My little thermometer thing is kind of on my doorstep, but it's quite warm, and it gets warm in this room because I'm on a southwest corner. Okay, so then we're going to trim the batting around the outside edge and on the inside of the egg. If I can get my hoop back a little bit. Okay. Boy, I just barely made it over here. Sometimes I have to watch that when I just lay stuff up in the hoop. Sometimes I get kind of close. Okay, and we're going to cut this out of the center. Trim this a little bit. Wonder if it still is windy out. I haven't been outside today. Wonder if it's still windy. It's been quite windy the last few days, but the wind was coming kind of from the south, so it was warm wind. Unlike a couple days ago, it was like, you know, in the teens, and so it was from the north. Felt like it was coming right off an iceberg. Okay, so there is our trimming for our batting. So then the next step is going to be the the placement line for the fabric, our background fabric. So I have to get my background fabric here. And this is step number 8 in the machine, showing it. It's showing on the instructions. And I have to find my background fabric, which is the larger piece with the shape butts on the back. Okay. And then we're going to lay that down, and it's going to tack it down and try to get it as centered as I can, like that. And then we're going to tack that down. That's step number 9 on the machine, because we have the quilting in there. So tack that down, and then we're going to back up and do step number 5, because that is the quilting. So the next step we need to do is the quilting. All right, so we're going to back up here. I'm going to go back over here. We're going to back up to number 5, which we know is the quilting. Okay, and I'm going to quilt my little block here. Got a couple little tails sticking up over here. There we go. All right, so it's going to quilt the block, and then we'll come back to start the actual background piece where we do the reverse applique. Okay, so we've got the quilting done. I'm going to need some water soluble here in a little bit, so I've got my piece here. All right, so now we need to look and see what it tells us to do. So it tells us to do the quilting and then says to finish the block by completing the remaining machine steps of the actual instructions. So now we're going to go back to Bunny 3. So here is Bunny 3, okay, and it's on page 13. And we are going to go ahead and be working on the actual reverse applique now. So I am going to go down then to step number, I believe we ended on 9, so it would be step number 10. Yes. So step number 10 is going to be the first step of the actual design. And it says that here on page 2, right down here. So it says to go to step 10, which is right here, so that we're going to start working with the placement line for the applique part. And then our page 3 tells us, you know, for Bunny 3 to go then to step number 1 on page 13. So that's where we're going to head here. So I'll put those pages away for now. And I've got my page 13 up and I'm on the right number. So give me a second here. And it says to, starch the fabric again. So give me just a moment. I'll go starch my fabric. The littler piece, the 5x5 piece, just go give it a little starch just to give it some more body, because we're going to be turning it to the back here in a moment. Okay, so I've got my piece of fabric starched, and I'm just going to leave my yellow in because I'm going to do the little lines for the applique with my yellow. And stitch the lining placement line. So number 1, that's what that's going to be, so we can put our lining on. So I'm just going to go ahead and stitch out number 10, and then we'll put our lining on. This is just going to be the placement line. Okay, and then we're going to lay our lining fabric face down. This particular fabric doesn't really have a right or wrong side. So face down on over the placement line, and then the next step is going to be the seam line. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm leaving the same color in, and I'm going to stitch my seam line. So we're doing the same thing we did on the last one. It's just going to be a different thing on the top. And this one's going to have some flowers on it too, which will be pretty. All right. So there is our sewing line. And now we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to trim through this. And I do this, and we're going to trim about 1/4 of an inch. Mine, I did a little less than 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to do about 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to cut on the inside of the egg here. Trim around here. All right, do that. And then I'm going to trim down through the stabilizer and the fabric. So it's kind of a little trick to get that started. Once you get it started, there we go. Just like we did before. I know it's our natural instinct to not want to have to cut through that stabilizer. And so Kimberbell does that quite often, actually. They have a lot of projects that they do in the hoop that they cut through the stabilizer, and so it's unusual. There you go. But I've never done reverse applique like this. I've done reverse applique lots of times, but never this way. So this is very interesting. I like the little seam in there because then you got a beautiful edge. You don't have to do a satin stitch or anything. Okay, then this is on page 13. And now we're going to do our little slits all the way around, about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to take my other little straight scissors to do that, and we'll go all the way around. And about 1/8 of an inch or so apart so that it nicely lays into our seam. So we're going to go all the way around. Hopefully you can see me. Yeah, I got quite warm in here all of a sudden. This is the time of day it gets warm. It's about 1 o'clock, and it gets quite warm in here in the middle of the afternoon, even when it's early like this. I was hoping I wouldn't have to get the air conditioner out. But if it keeps doing this, I may have to get the air conditioner out because it's really not that cool outside, and I open the window and it just gets hotter because the sun comes beating in then. All right, so we're getting all the way around. All the way around those, and just don't cut into your stitching. Just be careful not to cut into the stitching. That's why the little straight scissors work better. Okay, and I need to grab something here, just a moment. My little ironing pad so you can see what we're going to do. Then of course we're going to take our fabric and we're going to flip it to the back. So I'm just going to flip it through the hole. Give it a little finger press. Just be careful not to disturb your stabilizer. Just give it a little press. And they do tell you to starch again, but I don't want to get everything wet, so I didn't starch a second time. It was fine. I just pressed it with the iron. Starch makes things wet, so I actually use starch that I make with distilled water and vodka, so my starch is not real super stiff because other starch makes me break out. So I'm not a big starch person anyway. Okay. All right, so then what we'll do, and I'm going to do this off camera, but I'll show you how I did it. Remember my little ironing pad? This is my little Mickey Mouse ironing pad. I just folded it in half, and I'm going to lay it like this over on my ironing pad, and we're just going to iron this down so that it flattens it out nice. I'll just press it nice with my steam iron, and then I'm going to tape it on the corners again. Okay, so I'll be right back after I do the pressing. Okay, so I've got this all pressed. I'm going to grab my Kimberbell paper tape here, and we're going to put a few pieces of tape on the corner. Make sure it's nice and flat. You can kind of pull it a little bit so that it lays nice and flat on there. It's amazing if you trim well around the edges how flat it lays. It looks real nice. Doesn't look puckery. All right, so then we're going to, I might have to put a little piece down here though. These little top and bottom parts wants to poke out a little bit. Okay, oops here. I'm trying to get rid of this roll of tape. It seems to be a little sticky. I don't know why. Like on the top. It's sticky on the top. I don't know why. Okay, so there is our egg. Okay, so this is on page 14 in the instructions. And then from the back of the hoop, place the egg fabric right side down over the opening. So again, we're going to take, so here's our opening and it's all pressed. Okay, and then we're going to take the actual, whoops, everything's stuck here. We're going to take this little piece then. This is going to be the egg fabric. Whoops here. Boy, I got pink in my, I don't think it's going to show though. Got a piece of fat thread inside my stabilizer here. So I may have to see how I got red in there? I think it might show through. Sometimes I get threads in my on my shape flex, and then it sticks in there, you know. So get that out of there so it won't show in my design. I'm going to go press that down real quick. I also get cat hair in it. She likes to help out. So we're going to lay this over the hole like this and just kind of center it. And then we're going to tape that down to the back. So when we do the next set, they're going to be done basically the same way, but we're going to do some sewing on these back pieces first so that it looks like a little window instead. So let me get this tape down like that. Okay, now I'm going to flip it back over, press down a little bit to make sure everything's adhered there. Okay, and then I unthreaded my machine, so now I'm going to rethread my machine here. Get this out of the way. Okay, so now we're on, let's see, it says from the back of the hoop we did that, stitch the egg tack down. Wonder if they want you to put the water soluble on yet though. Not sure. Oh no, they have you put the water soluble on after that. Okay, so we'll do the egg tack down. So again, this in the instructions is shown in white, but I started mine with matching colors, so I'm just going to do all of mine so that they match. So I'm going to stay with the yellow, and we're going to do the little egg tack down line that's going to tack the backing to the front. And then we're going to move on and start working on our little bunny rabbit in the center. Get a hold of my water soluble. That's going to be so cute. I like that green in there. I didn't have the exact fabrics for this, so I just kind of used what I had. I did go buy a couple. I didn't have any lavender, so I went and bought a little piece of lavender. And I think the other one was, there was a lavender and a blue. I just didn't have much for lighter blues. Okay, so there's our little egg with the little outline around it. So now we're ready to do the bunny rabbit. So I think it says, we're on page 14 here, and it says to stitch the bunny placement line. Oh no, we have to put the water soluble on first. So after we stitch this, then it says to put the water soluble, completely covering that whole area. Okay, so I think this is big enough. See where my bunny's going to be. So I think this is big enough. So we're just going to lay this down, and I'm going to tape this down. I'm a little careful with this stuff so I don't get it stuck under my foot of my machine. So we're going to tape it down well. And on all four sides, I think, because there's going to be quite a lot of sewing on this. This is the piece I was using on the other one. I just used the other half. There we go. Okay, so now I think I'm going to switch over to my white because my bunny fabric is that white plushy stuff in the embellishment kit. And if I didn't say anything earlier about the embellishment kit, I'd highly recommend the embellishment kits for these because there's so many little pieces in them that it's just so much easier not to have to go hunt down all these different pieces. So I usually buy the embellishment kits because then everything's together. It actually costs less, I think, because then you don't have to buy like a whole roll of this or a whole roll of that when you just get what you need. So, okay. So this is step number 13 in the machine, and on the instructions, it's step number 4. So we're going to stitch the bunny placement line. So I put my white in for that. Maybe. Oh, did it unthread itself? Sometimes I've noticed my machine doesn't like it when there's a little lip there, so it might have been just a little upset. Let's see here. Let's go back to the beginning of that and see if it'll be happy here. There's a little piece of that, you know, that stabilizer on there. There we go. There's a little bit of, you know, we're going over the edges here, so there's a little bit of a height difference. So, all right, so there's our little bunny. And what does it say? Remove the tape, trim the fabric. Oh, I'm sorry, we missed a step here. Now we got to place the bunny. Place the plush fabric right side up, and then we're going to put some more water soluble on top. So they got 2 pieces of water soluble here in a second. I got to find my bunny fabric. There it is. So here's the plushy stuff, and it did say something about. right side up, nap going toward the bottom. So we want to make sure there's a nap on this stuff. And this stuff makes me sneeze. So if I sneeze, I apologize. This stuff makes me sneeze. I discovered that I was kind of allergic to fake fur. All right, so we're going to put this down like that. And then we're going to put another piece of water soluble over the top of this. Maybe, if I got another piece there. Because it's so lofty. So we'll just put another piece on. So this one did have two pieces because of the fuzzy stuff. So we'll just tape this up here. Put it over the top. Again, I'm going to tape this down. I don't tape everything, but boy, I like to tape this stuff because it seems like I'm always getting it. I don't want to get it under my foot. There we go. So we'll tape it over here. I've got the nap going down for my bunny. Okay. So then the next step is going to be the bunny tack down line. So we got our stabilizer or our water soluble over there. All right. This is number 5 on page 14. Okay. So now we're going to remove the tape, trim the fabric, and only the top layer of topping. So we're going to trim the tape or the topping away from the top, but we'll leave it underneath because that'll be easier to trim this stuff. And we'll just leave this on top because we're going to be sewing in the center here too. So let me untape a little bit at the top section here. If I can get it. There we go. And then we're going to trim the fabric and the topping away from the little bunny. So the bunny, like I said, I'm not going to guarantee I won't sneeze because of this stuff. I remember using it the other night, and I was like, why do I feel so weird? And it was all of a sudden I thought, oh, I bet it's that fur. Because I think I kind of blew on it to get the little fuzzies off, and I'm like, ooh, I better not do that. All right, whoops, gotta get it trimmed. It's not real long. I think it's like a minky or that, what do they call that stuff, that plushy stuff. You could also use maybe fleece, you know, like just fleece would be nice, just give you a little texture, you know. But this was in the kit. So, all right, so I'm just cutting through both the little fabric and the topping. Hopefully you can see me okay. Trying to watch the camera and what I'm doing. All right. Trying to get as close to the stitching as I can. I have to go up and trim a little bit at the top there. Okay. Get around here. So see, I'm leaving the bottom piece of water soluble because we're going to be stitching on this yet. And the top is still on there so that we can stitch over the top and do like little eyes and stuff for the bunny. I think I need to trim a little bit more there. I'm going to try not to blow and make this stuff make me sneeze. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. There's a little spot here yet. Okay, I think we got that. Some of these little hairs are kind of sticking up, and I want them to stick up in our stitching. And I think the next step, do not remove the remaining topping at this time. So we're going to leave this topping in here. Now we're going to move on to, we're going to do the ears first. So I'm going to put in I'm not sure which pink it is. It's one of the pinks. Let me see. The two symbols were very similar, so let me go look at my little thing. This one is the pink, the light pink. So we're going to use the light pink, which was my 124 flush pink for the ears. So that's the next step. Get those in there, and then I will be back in a moment once the little ears are done. Get those started. Still sewing on the water soluble to help us. All right. There's going to be his ears. Okay, so there's his little ears. We did the pink ears here. Looks like I got a little tail that needs to be clipped up there. And then the next step, is his little cheeks. And that's also in the same color. So I'll do the little cheeks. And then the next step is going to be the satin stitching around the bunny. Okay, so I put the white in to do the bunny, the satin stitching of the bunny, and then the next step will be, we're going to start working on his face and do some little flowers around the outside edge. Okay, so now we've got the little outline. It was more of a little motif stitch, and it did the little bunny tail over here. It was real cute. So now we're going to do, I put my black in, and I'm going to do the bunny's little face. And then I think the last several steps are going to be the flowers. So they're going to put some flowers around the outside edges. Okay, so the next several steps are going to be the little flowers, and I'm looking at mine, and I'm going to be awfully close to the edges of this water soluble. So I think I'm going to pull this off. I just don't want to get it caught under my foot. And we're done sewing on the bunny part. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull this water soluble off. It doesn't tell you to do this, but I'm afraid I might get caught on my foot because I'm pretty close to the edge. And we're going to start out with a pink flower. So I've got a light pink flower. So I've got my 124 flush pink for the flower here. Just a second. Oops, I got it twisted on my stand here. There we go. Do the pink flower first, and then I think the next color is going to be my mellow melon, my kind of melony color, and then a light blue. So I'm going to go ahead and do all three of these flowers before I come back, and then the last step will be the centers of the flowers. Okay, so I just went ahead and did the last step, which was the little flower centers, and those were done in white. So I have that light pink flower, the little melon kind of peachy colored flower, and then the blue flower, and then the centers are all white. So I went ahead and did those. So now what we'll have to do is get that water soluble off of the fuzzy stuff, and I'll do that in a little bit. But there's our little bunny. Isn't that cute? And we'll take the little water soluble off here. I'm going to turn it over and take all this tape off of the back. And then you will also do your the first one, which is the bunny 2, the same way we just did these two. So this is done the same way. You're going to start with your extra instructions, you know, the reverse applique with block by block quilting instructions, and you're going to do the little bunny that's done with the brown embroidery leather. So that's the other one that's done like this. It's done exactly the same way, but this one is done with embroidery leather for the bunny. Okay, so you can do that on your own. I think you can do that. Just start with your instructions up here on the first page of those. You know, get your embroidery design, and then go in and get the special one that says block by block for bunny 2. That's what this little guy is here. And then follow the instructions, and then up to where you need to go into the actual design, and it tells you what page you go to your book. So I think you'll be fine. We've done a couple of these together. I think you'll be fine to do the third one. All right, so give me a moment. I'm going to reset everything, and we're going to trim our little blocks because we need to trim these down to 4.5 by 4.5. Okay, so now we need to do the trimming on our little blocks here, and these are the reverse applique blocks. These were all done the same way. And so the first thing, these are going to be 4.5 by 4.5. I've got my instructions up here. So yes, 4.5 by 4.5. So I've got my little orange pop ruler that's 4.5 by 4.5 inches square. It gives us a nice little outline around the outside edge. You know, our tack down line for our fabric is going to really help us get that lined up. I'm just going to line that up. I've got my orange pop rulers and then my Martelli rotary mat here. And I'm just going to cut on the inside. So I like to kind of start in a little ways and pull back to the corner and go forward. So we're just going to trim all 3 of these the same way. So they're going to be so cute. I was actually really anxious to try this one. After reading some of the comments online, I was like, oh golly, you know, is this going to be really hard? But the only hard part about it is making sure that you're starting in the right spot in your instructions and getting the right designs. So here is our little, I need a new rotary blade. So I noticed I was a little bit, a couple of spots here I'll have to fix. That's the next thing, is the rotary blade needs to be changed. I use my blade for everything. I cut vinyl with it and all kinds of stuff, and I shouldn't, but I always do. All right, so there's our first little block. Looks like I have a little spot that needs to be trimmed. Just to get that trimmed off of there. There we go. So there's our first little block. So that's the one I did before I videoed, so you can see. Okay, and then let's do the little chick. So this is the first one we did. Oh, here comes my helper. She has to announce her arrival. So I'm going to line that line up, that placement line again, or that tack down line. I'm going to start in just a little ways, pull back to the corner and go forward. This rotary mat really helps using the orange pop ruler. So if you don't have a rotary mat, the Martelli ones are excellent because they actually have a like a Lazy Susan on the bottom. So they actually roll. Some of the other ones just do not turn well at all. All right, so let's get this one. Okay. So here's our, still have a little spot that didn't cut very well, didn't I? We're cutting through 2 layers of fabric, you know, and part of it. So I think that's why. Get that, there we go. All right, so there's our little chick. Isn't that darling? And then we'll be sewing these together. I think all of these go in the top row. One of them's the bottom and one's the top. I can't remember. Maybe these were the bottom row. But the same type goes in the rows, I think. So aren't those cute? There's our first 2. And then the third one that we did, second one in the video, the third one I did was the little bunny. So we'll get him all lined up. I'm going to use my little tack down line to help me. Pull it over a little bit. Hey, Gigi, you're going to have to move, hon. Hopefully I don't get her. She doesn't like this turning mat very well because she can't walk on it. She tries to walk on it, and then she turns it, and then she's like freaked out. Okay. And I'm starting in just a little ways and then pulling back to the corner, and that really helps with these rulers. Start in a little ways, pull back, and then push forward. All right. Oh my gosh, isn't that cute? So there's our little bunny. I haven't taken the water soluble off yet. I'll do that in a little bit. But there's our little 3 little blocks. Aren't those darling? And these are the ones that they call reverse applique. And then the next 3 we're going to do, so I'll get these laid here for you so you can see them. The next 3, and I did one of them already, we're actually going to stitch on the background fabric here first, and then we'll put it in. So it's basically the same method, but what do they call it here? Let me get my windowed reverse applique. So we're actually going to sew on the background fabric first and do that first, and then we're going to do this part and then put it in. Okay, so I'll come back in the next video to do the windowed reverse applique blocks. So thank you so much for joining me for the second video of the April mini quilt by Kimberbell. And we will come back and do the third video will be the other type of blocks. So thank you so much. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, my YouTube channel, please do. That way you get notifications about the new videos that I do. And then also give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. So thanks everybody, and I'll see you in the next video.